Frozen moments, a sister's search for truth. There's a particular kind of emptiness that forms when you lose someone who has been part of your life since before your life even began. That hollow space that forms in your chest when half of what made you whole is suddenly gone. You might know that feeling, when someone who shared your birthday, your childhood, your DNA, your face, disappears from your world. For Claire, that emptiness arrived on a Tuesday morning, when police officers appeared at her door with solemn expressions and news about her twin sister Elise. An accident, they said, a fall from her apartment balcony. Tragic and unexpected. The official report would later call it an accident with a possibility of suicide, despite Elise having no history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Despite the fact that Elise had called Claire just hours before, excited about a breakthrough in her research. Despite the strange bruising on her wrists that was mentioned only in passing in the autopsy report. You know how it feels when something doesn't add up? When your mind keeps returning to the same inconsistencies, like a tongue probing a sore tooth? That's where Claire lived for weeks after Elise's funeral, in that space of nagging doubt, of questions without answers, of grief without closure. The sisters had always shared everything, finishing each other's sentences, feeling each other's pain, knowing when the other was in trouble without a word being exchanged. And now, in the echo of her sister's absence, Claire felt something was terribly wrong with the story she'd been told. The authorities had moved on. The case was closed, but the hollowness inside her had transformed into something else entirely. A quiet, burning certainty that there was more to her sister's death than anyone was willing to see. It happened exactly 1 month after Elise's funeral. Claire had been sorting through her sister's belongings, the painful ritual of deciding what to keep, what to give away, what would hurt too much to look at again. Among Elise's scientific journals and research notes, her twin had been a brilliant physicist focusing on quantum theory. Claire found a small, peculiar device, about the size of a pocket watch, made of metal with strange engravings and a single button. Something Elise had created in her lab, perhaps? Something connected to the breakthrough she'd mentioned in their last conversation. Without thinking, Claire pressed the button. And everything stopped. Have you ever experienced that moment in the shower, when a thought hits you with such clarity that you freeze? Water droplets seemingly suspended around you as your mind races. That's what it felt like, except it wasn't just Claire's perception that stopped. It was everything. The dust motes hanging in the beam of sunlight through the window. The neighbor's dog frozen mid-bark outside. The digital clock on Elise's nightstand stuck between seconds. Exactly 60 seconds later, the world lurched back into motion, leaving Claire gasping, disoriented, and fundamentally changed. What would you do if you suddenly possessed the power to step outside of time for 1 minute each day? For Claire, there was never any question. This wasn't a gift to be used frivolously. This was Elise reaching out from beyond, giving her twin the one thing she needed most, a chance to discover the truth. Those first attempts were disorienting, overwhelming. During those precious frozen minutes, Claire could move through a world on pause, observing but not changing, seeing but not being seen. She learned quickly that the rules of this pause were strict. She couldn't move anything larger than what she could physically move herself. She couldn't extend the time beyond 60 seconds, and she could only use it once in a 24-hour period. Some people say grief is like moving through molasses, where every moment drags and time loses meaning. For Claire, time literally stood still as she moved through her investigation. She began at Elise's apartment, using her frozen minutes to search for evidence the police might have missed or ignored. She discovered strange notations in her sister's research notebooks, references to temporal displacement, and quantum pausing that seemed to explain the very power Claire now possessed. More concerning were the notes about someone called only P who had been pressuring Elise about her research, demanding results, threatening consequences. The final entry in Elise's journal, written the very day of her death, contained just 3 lines. P knows what the device can do. Not safe. Must warn Claire. The hollowness in Claire's chest became a cold, hard certainty. There's a particular feeling that comes with the realization that someone you trusted has betrayed you. It's like the floor dropping out from beneath your feet, leaving you in perpetual freefall. Claire experienced this sensation when her 60-second investigation of her sister's university office revealed emails between Elise and her mentor, Professor Philip Parker, P., discussing the temporal displacement device and its potential military applications. The last email contained a thinly veiled threat about what would happen if Elise tried to take her research public. Each day became a careful calculation. Where should Claire use her precious minute? What could she discover in that brief pause of reality? She found security camera footage that showed Parker entering Elise's building the night of her death. She discovered financial records indicating military funding being channeled through Parker's research department. She located a hidden recorder in Elise's apartment that had captured the sounds of an argument, a struggle, and finally a scream on the night her sister died. The world keeps moving even when we feel stuck in our grief. For Claire, this truth became literal as she learned to navigate between the flowing river of normal time and her 60-second islands of frozen reality. The contrast was jarring, the world continuing its relentless forward march while she held these small moments perfectly still, searching for the pieces of a puzzle no one else knew existed. It's strange how clarity often comes in the most unexpected moments. For Claire, it arrived during her investigation of Parker's private lab, accessed during one of her frozen minutes. There, she found not only a duplicate of the device she now carried, but also detailed plans for its weaponization. The ability to freeze time, even briefly, had obvious military applications. Elise had realized this too late. Her refusal to continue the research, her threat to expose the project, these were what had sealed her fate. The evidence Claire gathered might not stand up in court. How could she explain how she obtained it without revealing the very power that made her investigation possible? But evidence wasn't her only goal. Understanding was. And in those frozen moments between seconds, Claire finally pieced together the truth of her sister's last night. There's a particular strength that comes from facing the darkest truths and refusing to look away. Claire found this strength as she used her final frozen minute to confront Parker himself. She didn't attack him. She didn't seek revenge. Instead, she used those 60 seconds to place all the evidence she had gathered, copies of emails, financial records, security footage, directly in front of him, along with a simple note. I know what you did to Elise. The police will too. Her research dies with us. When time resumed, she watched the color drain from his face as he realized that someone had been in his locked office. Someone had accessed his most guarded secrets. Someone knew the truth he thought safely buried. The fear in his eyes told Claire everything she needed to know. Some monsters are most effectively defeated, not through confrontation, but through the knowledge that they are seen, their actions exposed to the light. What changes in us when we discover abilities beyond normal human experience? For Claire, the power to freeze time hadn't transformed her into something other than human. It had made her more acutely aware of her humanity, of how precious each second truly is, of how momentary pauses can bring clarity that the rush of normal life often obscures. In the days that followed Parker's panicked confession to the authorities, a confession that stunned everyone who had known the respected professor, Claire found herself at her sister's grave, the temporal displacement device heavy in her pocket. She had used it one last time, not for investigation, but for a moment of quiet communion with the memory of her twin, standing in the peaceful stillness of frozen time as birds paused mid-flight and wind-blown leaves hung suspended around her. The hollowness in her chest had not disappeared. That space would always belong to Elise. But it had transformed into something different. Something that held both the pain of loss and the peace of understanding, something that connected her to her sister across the boundary that separated them. Perhaps you've experienced that transformation of grief, when the raw wound gradually becomes a different kind of space, one that holds memories, love, and even wisdom gained at too high a price. For Claire, that space now also held the knowledge that she had completed her twin's final work. Not the research that had ultimately led to Elise's death, but something more important. She had shown that truth, given enough time, even in 60-second increments, will eventually find its way into the light. The device remains with Claire, a reminder of what was lost and what was found in those frozen moments between seconds. She uses it rarely now, and never for investigation. Sometimes, on the anniversary of her sister's birth and death, she presses the button and simply exists in perfect stillness, feeling the strange but comforting certainty that in these paused moments, somehow, she and Elise exist together again. Twins once more, sharing the same frozen second in time. And in those moments, the hollowness inside her chest fills with a singular truth, that love, like time itself, cannot truly be stopped, only temporarily paused. It continues its forward movement, carrying us with it, connecting us across all boundaries, even the final one between life and what lies beyond.